Picture this, you are an engineer. You wake up on a Tuesday morning in 2009, you brush your teeth, you eat breakfast. You kiss your kids goodbye, you drive to work. And your workplace is not some ordinary office building. It is one of the most heavily guarded facilities on the planet. Armed soldiers at every entrance. Multiple security checkpoints. No phones allowed inside. No internet connection to the outside world. You work here because you are helping build something that your government believes will change the balance of power in the Middle East forever. You sit down at your computer. You check your instruments. Everything looks normal. You sip your coffee. And somewhere, in an office building thousands of miles away, someone who has never met you, never seen your face, never set foot in your country, presses enter. And your entire world starts falling apart. Not dramatically. Not with an explosion or an alarm. Quietly. Invisibly. The machines you are responsible for start behaving strangely. Spinning too fast. Then too slow. Your screens tell you everything is fine. But something in your gut tells you it isn't. Over the next few weeks, you watch in complete confusion as the machines you maintain start destroying themselves. One by one. From the inside. And you have absolutely no idea why. Because the thing destroying them is invisible. It has no smell. No sound. No physical form. It is 1,500 lines of computer code, written by people you will never know, in a country you may never visit. And it has just achieved something that no army, no bomb, no missile had ever achieved before. It had physically destroyed a real-world target without a single soldier crossing a single border. That code had a name, Stuxnet, and what it did and how it did it changed the nature of war forever. Welcome to the story of the attack that started it all. Before we get into Stuxnet, I need to give you some context, because this story only makes sense if you understand the world it happened in. 2009, the United States and most of Western Europe are absolutely terrified of one thing: Iran's nuclear program. Iran has been enriching uranium, a process that, if taken far enough, can produce material for a nuclear weapon. The United States has tried diplomacy, sanctions, international pressure. None of it has worked. The military option, actually bombing Iran's nuclear facilities, is on the table. But the consequences of that would be catastrophic. It could start a regional war. It could spike global oil prices overnight. It could kill hundreds of civilians. It could unite the Iranian people behind their government in ways that would make the nuclear program even harder to stop. There's no good option. And then, someone in a classified meeting room somewhere in Washington, D.C. or Tel Aviv asks a question that nobody had seriously asked before. What if we didn't need bombs? What if we could destroy their program from the inside, without anyone ever knowing we were there? That question is where Stuxnet begins. And the answer to that question is one of the most remarkable engineering achievements in the history of warfare. The facility is called Natanz. It sits in the middle of Iran, in the Isfahan province, surrounded by desert. From the outside, it looks almost unremarkable. Low buildings, a few antennas, some security fencing. But underground, deep underground, buried under meters of reinforced concrete specifically designed to survive an airstrike, are thousands of centrifuges. Now I need to explain what centrifuges are because this matters. When you enrich uranium, the process of making it usable for either power generation or weapons, you spin uranium gas at extremely high speeds. The centrifuges doing the spinning look a bit like tall, thin metal cylinders. They spin at roughly 1,000 rotations per second. At that speed, the heavier and lighter components of the uranium gas separate. You collect the heavier component. You repeat the process thousands of times. And eventually, after months of continuous operation, you have enriched uranium. The degree of enrichment determines what you can do with it. Low enrichment, nuclear power. High enrichment, nuclear weapons. Iran had approximately 5,000 of these centrifuges operating at Natanz, and they were running around the clock. Now here is the thing about centrifuges spinning at 1,000 rotations per second. They are incredibly sensitive machines. Even tiny variations in speed can cause them to vibrate. And if they vibrate too much, they tear themselves apart. This is exactly what Stuxnet exploited. But before we get to how, let me tell you something that still blows my mind every time I think about it. Natanz was air-gapped. Do you know what that means? It means the computers controlling those centrifuges were not connected to the internet. Not in any way. No email, no web browsing. No external network connections of any kind. The people who designed the security of that facility knew that internet-connected systems could be hacked, so they physically disconnected them from the internet entirely. This was considered the gold standard of computer security. If your computer isn't connected to anything, nobody can hack into it remotely. It seemed like an airtight solution. And the people who created Stuxnet looked at that air gap and found a way around it. Here's how they did it. Step 1. They created a piece of malware, a malicious computer program that was unlike anything that had ever been built before. Most malware at the time was relatively simple. Steal some passwords, send some spam. Maybe lock your files and demand money. Stuxnet was operating on a completely different level. It was designed to do something extraordinarily specific. Find one particular type of industrial control system made by a company called Siemens running one particular software configuration and then, and only then, activate and do something very precise to the machines that system was controlling. If it infected a computer that wasn't running that exact Siemens configuration, it did absolutely nothing. It just sat there, invisible, harmless, waiting. This specificity was intentional, because the creators of Stuxnet did not want it spreading around the world causing random chaos. They wanted it to find one target, Natanz. Step 2. But how do you get malware into a facility that isn't connected to the internet? You use the oldest trick in the book, a human being. Researchers believe that Stuxnet was initially introduced to the Natanz network via infected USB drives. Someone, either a witting spy or an unwitting contractor who had no idea what was on the drive, plugged a USB into a computer inside Natanz. And Stuxnet woke up. It spread quietly through the internal network, infecting computer after computer, doing nothing to any of them, until it found what it was looking for, the Siemens control systems, the ones connected to the centrifuges. Step 3. This is the part that made security researchers genuinely speechless when they discovered it. Once Stuxnet found the right systems, it installed itself into the control software, and then it did two things simultaneously. Thing 1. It began sending commands to the centrifuges, telling them to spin faster than they were designed to handle, then slower, then faster again. These speed variations caused the centrifuges to vibrate, and then to crack, and then to fail. Thing 2, at exactly the same time, it intercepted the readings that the centrifuges were sending back to the engineers' screens, and replaced them with recorded data from when everything was normal. So the engineers were watching their screens, seeing perfectly normal readings, while the machines 30 meters away were tearing themselves apart. This is the part that I find genuinely chilling every time I explain it. The Iranians didn't know they were being attacked. They thought their centrifuges were breaking down due to manufacturing defects. They blamed their own engineers. They replaced parts. They ran diagnostics that showed nothing wrong. They were going slowly insane trying to figure out a mechanical problem that wasn't mechanical at all. Over approximately 14 months, an estimated 1,000 centrifuges were destroyed. Iran's uranium enrichment capability was set back by somewhere between 1 and 2 years. And here's what makes Stuxnet not just historically significant, but genuinely revolutionary. It used 4 separate zero-day exploits. I need to explain what a zero-day is because this detail is what separates Stuxnet from everything that came before it. A zero-day exploit is a vulnerability in software, a weakness, a bug, a flaw, that the people who made the software don't know exists yet. 0 days of warning. 0 days to fix it. 0 day. Finding one zero-day exploit is incredibly difficult work. It requires brilliant people spending months, sometimes years, probing software for weaknesses. A single zero-day exploit on the black market can sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Some sell for over $1 million. Stuxnet used 4, simultaneously. The security researchers who spent months reverse engineering Stuxnet after it was discovered said they had never seen anything like it. One researcher described it as arriving at a crime scene and finding not one smoking gun, but 4, all custom-made, all pointing at the same target. The amount of resources, financial, technical, human, required to develop 4 simultaneous zero-day exploits and weave them into a single piece of malware is staggering. This was not the work of criminals. This was not the work of a small group of hackers, however talented. This was a nation-state, possibly 2. The United States and Israel have never officially confirmed their involvement in Stuxnet. But in 2012, the New York Times published a detailed investigation based on interviews with current and former American, European and Israeli officials that described the program in detail. The program had a name: Operation Olympic Games. It had been started under President George W. Bush and continued and accelerated under President Barack Obama. Obama reportedly asked whether the attack should be called off when Stuxnet accidentally spread beyond Natanz, infecting computers at other Iranian facilities and eventually appearing on systems around the world. The answer he got was that Stuxnet would not activate on systems that didn't match the Natanz profile. The collateral infections were harmless. Obama gave the order to continue. And in doing so, whether he fully understood it at the time or not, he crossed a line that had never been crossed before. A sitting US president had authorized the use of a digital weapon to cause physical destruction in another country, without a declaration of war, without congressional authorization, without the public knowing, in silence, and it worked. For a while. Here is something the creators of Stuxnet probably did not plan for. It escaped. In June 2010, about a year after it began operating inside Natanz, Stuxnet appeared on computers outside Iran, in India, in Indonesia, in Azerbaijan, and then on a computer belonging to an Iranian student studying abroad, who uploaded it to an online virus scanning service called VirusTotal. VirusTotal automatically shares suspicious files with antivirus companies around the world. And within days, security researchers at a small Belarusian cybersecurity firm called Virusblokada were staring at something they had never seen before. They knew immediately it was extraordinary. They shared it with the wider security research community. And for the next several months, some of the best security minds in the world worked around the clock trying to understand what they were looking at. Symantec, Kaspersky, ESIT. Researchers who had spent their entire careers analyzing malware said Stuxnet was unlike anything in their experience. One Symantec researcher described the process of analyzing it as reading a mystery novel where every chapter reveals a new twist. The more they dug, the more extraordinary it became. The 40 days, the fake centrifuge readings, the incredible specificity of the target. By September 2010, enough had been pieced together that the security community understood what Stuxnet was designed to do, and the implications hit the world like a freight train. Because if a piece of code could destroy centrifuges at a nuclear facility, it could destroy anything connected to an industrial control system. Power plants, water treatment facilities, gas pipelines, railway systems, hospital equipment. The modern world runs on industrial control systems. And Stuxnet had just proven that every single one of them was a potential target. The Iranian government officially acknowledged that Natanz had been affected by a computer virus. They claimed the damage was minimal. Security researchers who analyzed the centrifuge failure rates did not believe them. And the world, governments, militaries, corporations, security researchers began to understand that something fundamental had changed. The age of cyber warfare had begun, not theoretically, not in some future scenario that policymakers needed to plan for. Right now, already, happening. Stuxnet was the Hiroshima moment of cyber warfare. The proof of concept that changed everything. And just like Hiroshima, once the door was opened, it could never be closed again. Because if the United States and Israel could build Stuxnet, other nations could build their own versions. And they were already watching, taking notes, learning. Now let's zoom out. Because Stuxnet was one specific type of cyber operation, sabotage, designed to destroy something. But the far more common, and in many ways far more dangerous type of cyber operation is espionage, stealing secrets. And I want to explain how this actually works. Because most people have a completely wrong picture in their head. They imagine a hacker, hoodie, dark room, furiously typing code, breaking through firewalls like a digital battering ram. The reality is much more boring. And much more frightening, because the most effective cyber espionage doesn't break through walls. It walks through doors that people accidentally left open. Let me walk you through how a real cyber espionage operation targeting a military contractor might work. Step 1. Reconnaissance. Before a single piece of malware is deployed, before any attack begins, the hackers spend weeks or months just watching. They look at the target company's website. They find the names of employees on LinkedIn. They find their email addresses, usually easy to figure out once you know the company's email format. They look at what software the company uses, what operating systems, what email clients, what collaboration tools. They map the entire digital surface of the organization, without touching a single system, without triggering a single alarm. Just watching, from the outside. This phase is called reconnaissance. And it is where the real work happens. Because the more you know about a target, the more precisely you can attack them. Step 2. The entry point. Now here is the part that should make every single person watching this feel slightly uncomfortable. Because the entry point in the vast majority of sophisticated cyber espionage operations is a human being. Specifically, a carefully crafted email. The hackers have done their reconnaissance. They know that the head of engineering at this defense contractor is named. Let's call him David. They know David went to Penn State. They know David is a fan of a particular football team. They know David recently attended an aerospace conference in Seattle. They know the names of David's colleagues. They know what projects David has been publicly associated with. Now they write David an email. It looks like it comes from a colleague, or from the conference organizer following up, or from a recruiter at a company David has been quietly interested in. The email is perfectly written. It references specific details that make it feel completely legitimate. It contains an attachment, a PDF of conference proceedings, or a job description, or a technical document that David would genuinely find interesting. David opens it. And in that moment, in the fraction of a second it takes for that PDF to render on his screen, a piece of malware installs itself silently on his computer. No pop-up, no warning, no indication that anything has happened. David goes back to work. And the malware, sitting completely invisibly in the background, begins its real job. Step 3, the quiet phase. This is the part that most people don't understand, and it is the most important part. Amateur hackers get in and immediately start grabbing everything they can. They make noise. They move fast. They get caught. Nation-state hackers do the opposite. They get in, and then they wait. They map the internal network. They understand how information flows. They identify where the most valuable files are stored. They figure out which user accounts have access to what. They move laterally, slowly, carefully from David's computer to other systems on the network. They establish multiple footholds, multiple points of access, so that if one is discovered, they still have others. And they do all of this while generating as little suspicious activity as possible. Moving only small amounts of data at a time. Operating during normal business hours so their network activity blends in with legitimate traffic. Sometimes they are inside a network for months before they take anything. Sometimes for years. The hackers who broke into the US Office of Personnel Management, which we will talk about in a future video, were inside that network for almost a year before anyone noticed. A year, moving through one of the most sensitive government networks in the United States, completely undetected. Step 4, exfiltration. When they are ready, when they have identified exactly what they want and exactly how to take it, they begin the actual theft. And again, they do it slowly. Not a massive download that would trigger bandwidth alerts. Small packets of data, compressed, encrypted, disguised to look like normal network traffic. Sent to servers in third countries that have nothing to do with the actual attackers, who are routing everything through multiple layers of infrastructure specifically designed to make tracing them back to their source impossible. The stolen data arrives at its destination. And the people who sent David that email now have the classified blueprints for a next-generation fighter jet, or the specifications for a new missile guidance system, or years of weapons research that cost billions of dollars and thousands of man-hours to develop. All of it for the cost of writing one very convincing email. Now multiply this by thousands, because this is not a hypothetical. This is happening right now, at this moment, against defense contractors, government agencies, research universities, technology companies. The United States government estimates that China alone has stolen intellectual property, technology, research, trade secrets, military designs worth hundreds of billions of dollars through cyber espionage. Hundreds of billions, some estimates go higher. This is not just embarrassing, it is strategically catastrophic. Because when your adversary can steal the results of your research and development, they skip the decades of work and billions in investment it took you to produce those results. They field weapon systems that match yours in a fraction of the time, at a fraction of the cost, and you paid for it. Your taxpayers, your defense budget, your engineers did all the work, and someone else walked away with the results. I want to give you some numbers, because I think numbers make this real in a way that descriptions don't. 2,300. That is the number of significant cyberattacks on U.S. government agencies and military contractors reported in 2023 alone. 2,300. That is more than 6 attacks every single day. Every single day. Most of them never make the news. Most of them are never publicly acknowledged. Because admitting you were hacked is embarrassing. It tells your enemies what worked. And it tells your own people something uncomfortable. That the most powerful military in human history can be probed, tested, and sometimes penetrated by people sitting in apartments on the other side of the world. But here's the number that I think is the most staggering. The cost. The FBI estimates that cybercrime, which includes state-sponsored espionage, criminal hacking, ransomware, and intellectual property theft, costs the global economy approximately $8 trillion per year. $8 trillion. To put that in perspective, that is larger than the GDP of every country on Earth except the United States and China. The entire economic output of Japan, the world's third largest economy, is smaller than the annual global cost of cybercrime. And a significant chunk of that $8 trillion is not random criminal activity. It is deliberate state-sponsored theft. Nation-states, primarily but not exclusively China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran, using cyber capabilities to steal money, technology, and strategic advantage. On an industrial scale, here is another number, 21.5 million. That is the number of background check files stolen from the U.S. Office of Personnel Management in 2015. We will cover this in full detail in video 2, but I want you to hold that number for a moment. 21.5 million files. Each one containing detailed personal information about a current or former federal employee, their financial history, their foreign contacts, their psychological evaluations, their family members, their secrets, all of it in the hands of Chinese intelligence. That single hack, according to former intelligence officials, may take a generation to fully understand the consequences of. A generation, not a news cycle, not a budget year. A generation. Here is a number that affects you more directly. 15 billion. That is the number of Internet of Things devices. Smart devices connected to networks, currently in use around the world. Your smart TV, your smart speaker, your smart thermostat, the connected sensors in your building's heating system, the networked medical equipment at your local hospital, the traffic management systems in your city. 15 billion devices. Most of them with security that is, to put it plainly, terrible. Because the companies that make these devices are competing on price and features. Security costs money. Security slows down development. Security is invisible to the consumer standing in the store choosing between 2 smart speakers. So security gets deprioritized. And the result is 15 billion connected devices embedded in the fabric of daily life. Each one a potential entry point. Each one a potential weapon. And here's the last number I want you to sit with. 0. That is the number of comprehensive international treaties governing cyber warfare. 0. We have treaties governing nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons. We have the Geneva Conventions governing the conduct of war. We have rules, imperfect, sometimes ignored, but existing for almost every domain of human conflict. In cyberspace? 0 binding international agreements. 0 clear definitions of what constitutes an act of war. 0 agreed consequences for crossing lines that haven't even been drawn yet. A completely ungoverned battlefield, where the most powerful nations on Earth are actively competing with no referee, no rules, and no clear idea of where it ends. I want to humanize this for a moment. Because when we talk about nation-state hackers and state-sponsored cyber units, it sounds abstract. It sounds like we are talking about organizations, institutions, acronyms. We are talking about people, specifically some of the most talented people alive. Let me tell you about the kind of person who ends up doing this work. In China, there is a program, run through the People's Liberation Army, that identifies mathematically gifted children from a very young age. These children are recruited into specialized schools. They receive intensive training in mathematics, computer science, and network security from their early teens. By the time they are in their mid-20s, they have more specialized technical training than most people receive in a lifetime. And they are employed full-time with military salaries and benefits to probe and penetrate the networks of China's adversaries. This is not a hobby, not a side project. It is their job, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Find vulnerabilities, develop exploits, conduct operations. The unit, widely believed to be responsible for many of China's most significant cyber operations, is called APT-41. APT stands for Advanced Persistent Threat. The persistent part is important. These are not opportunistic attackers looking for easy targets. They pick specific targets. They study them for months. They develop custom tools for the specific vulnerabilities they find. And they maintain access for as long as possible, sometimes years, extracting value continuously. The U.S. Department of Justice has indicted several members of APT-41. The indictments read like a greatest hits of corporate and government espionage, healthcare companies, technology firms, defense contractors, telecommunications providers, universities, dozens of countries, hundreds of targets, years of continuous operation. None of the indicted individuals will ever see the inside of an American courtroom, because they live in China, and China does not extradite its citizens to face foreign criminal charges. The indictments are largely symbolic, a statement that the US government knows who did it and is keeping score. But the operations continue. On the Russian side, the picture is slightly different. Russia uses a combination of military intelligence units, primarily the GRU and FSB, and what researchers call privaters, criminal hacking groups that operate with the implicit permission of the Russian government. They are allowed to conduct criminal operations, ransomware attacks, financial theft, as long as they make themselves available for government operations when called upon. It is a useful arrangement for both sides. The government gets a layer of deniability. The hackers get protection from prosecution. And the targets, governments, corporations, critical infrastructure operators around the world, face an adversary that is simultaneously a criminal enterprise and an intelligence operation. And then there are the Americans. The NSA's Tailored Access Operations Unit, TAO, is widely considered the most sophisticated offensive cyber operation in the world. These are the people who built Stuxnet, or at least contributed to it. They recruit from hacking competitions, from university computer science programs, from the private security research community. They look for the same qualities everywhere: creativity, obsessiveness, the ability to think like the adversary, and the willingness to work in complete secrecy on things they can never talk about for the rest of their lives. The people doing this work on all sides are not the Hollywood stereotype. They are not antisocial misfits with poor hygiene who never leave their basement. They are engineers, scientists, problem solvers, people who find genuinely fascinating intellectual challenges in the work, who are very good at what they do and who happen to be pointed at each other by governments. In a war that most of the world doesn't know is being fought. Let's bring everything together, and let's be honest about what it means. Stuxnet proved that computer code can physically destroy real-world infrastructure. Cyber espionage has stolen hundreds of billions of dollars worth of military and industrial secrets. Nation-states are employing thousands of full-time professional hackers. 15 billion poorly secured devices sit embedded in critical infrastructure around the world. And there are zero comprehensive international rules governing any of it. So what does that mean for ordinary people, for you? Here is the honest answer. The power grid that keeps your lights on is connected to control systems that have been targeted by state-sponsored hackers. In 2015 and 2016, Russian hackers successfully shut down portions of Ukraine's power grid. Twice, in winter. Hundreds of thousands of people lost heat and electricity. This was not a proof of concept. This was not a test. It was a real attack on real infrastructure, affecting real people, and it worked. Your hospital runs on network systems. In 2017, a piece of ransomware called WannaCry, widely attributed to North Korean hackers, infected the UK's National Health Service. Hospitals cancelled thousands of appointments. Surgery was postponed. Ambulances were diverted. Medical staff went back to using pen and paper. People's lives were put at risk by a piece of code. Your bank and every financial institution you interact with is under continuous attack. The financial sector experiences more cyber attacks than any other industry. Every single day, most of them fail. Some of them don't. And the social media you use to stay informed about the world is an active battlefield for influence operations. Foreign intelligence agencies, primarily but not exclusively, Russian, have spent years running systematic campaigns designed to inflame division, spread disinformation, and undermine trust in democratic institutions. Not through dramatic propaganda, through subtle amplification of existing tensions, finding the things that make different groups of your society angry at each other, and turning up the volume quietly, consistently, over years. The goal is not to make you believe a specific lie. The goal is to make you trust nothing, to make you so confused about what is real that you disengage from civic life entirely, or become so angry at your fellow citizens that you cannot cooperate with them on anything. A society that cannot agree on basic facts cannot respond effectively to a threat. That is not an accident. That is the strategy, and it is working in almost every major democracy in the world. Now, I do not want to leave you feeling helpless, because the picture is not entirely dark. Awareness is growing. Governments are investing in cyber defense at unprecedented levels. International conversations about norms and rules for cyber conflict are happening slowly, imperfectly, but happening. Technology companies are finally taking security seriously in ways they did not a decade ago. And ordinary people like you, who understand what is happening and why, are harder to manipulate than people who don't. Understanding that influence operations exist and how they work does not make you immune to them, but it makes you more resilient, more likely to pause before sharing something that makes you furious, more likely to ask who benefits from you believing this particular thing, more likely to notice when you are being played. And in a war that is partly fought in the minds of ordinary citizens, that matters. Let's go back to where we started. That Tuesday morning in Iran, the engineer, the coffee. The machines destroying themselves invisibly while the screens showed everything was fine. That moment, 2009, somewhere in Natanz, was not just a successful military operation. It was a turning point in human history. Because before Stuxnet, the physical world and the digital world were separate. You could secure a facility by disconnecting it from the internet. You could protect your centrifuges by putting them underground and surrounding them with guards. The real world and the digital world were two different places. After Stuxnet, they are the same place. Every machine connected to any network, however isolated, is a potential target. Every industrial system that runs on software, which is almost all of them now, can potentially be reached, touched, broken by someone sitting in an office building thousands of miles away, who you will never meet, whose name you will never know, and who might, right now, be mapping the vulnerabilities of systems that the safety and security of you and everyone you love depends on. That is not a comfortable thought, but it is a true one. And the first step to dealing with a true and uncomfortable thought is to stop looking away from it. That is why this series exists, not to frighten you, but to make sure you understand the world you actually live in. Not the world you might prefer to live in, the real one. Stay with us, because in video 2 we are going to talk about 3 hacks that make Stuxnet look like a warm-up act. 3 real attacks, 3 real targets, 3 sets of consequences that are still unfolding today. One of them involved the personal secrets of 21.5 million Americans. Another brought one of the world's largest entertainment companies to its knees. And the third, this one still makes intelligence officials lose sleep, may have compromised the identity of every undercover American intelligence officer operating anywhere in the world. That video drops next week. You do not want to miss it.